For the third time today. Uh, Welcome to another Midrash Rabbah 2.0 with After His Heart Ministries. I'm Rabbi Q, and we are discussing the life of Sarah Torah portion. And we have been looking at the word meditate, and we are now to what's called the Rabbi's Nugget. However, during the break, um, Deborah had mentioned that um, a thorn being inside of a tent could cause sweeping, and that sweeping could be indicative of cleaning. That was mom's input, which then makes the concept of meditation about removing the thorn. Well, that triggered a whole bunch of thoughts in my head. So, what we can do is explore this just a little bit longer, and we'll just kind of close the Shabbat. We'll let the sun set, and we'll just close the Shabbat with this last part of the Midrash. So, a couple of things that I want to do. First is I want to address the concept of permutation. So Rabbi Hirsch actually was the one who was very successful at this. Samuel Hirsch, Samuel R. Hirsch specifically, Rabbi Samuel R. Hirsch was the one who really got into depth with permutations and cognates and the values of letters and all that. In his book, um, Lexicon of Hebrew, I believe it's called. I don't know what I did with that book, but that book has some amazing things about permutations and all that, and how certain words mean the same thing even when they're reversed, or they may mean the opposite of each other, and all kinds of stuff. So, what we're going to do is we're going to see, and I have not done this yet, so we're going to see, we're going to jump into the we're going to jump into the ancient Hebrew language and alphabet book and start looking at letter pairs. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go ahead and jump into that right off the bat. We'll continue to explore this word meditate. So jumping into that, we're going to go over here and use this book, which is also Jeff Benner's book, by the way. You see, I really do honor this man. He's done some amazing work. I do not want to say in any way that I am superior to him or anything like that. It's just where he stopped, I continued. That's all. Okay, so we're going to move over to, instead of Samek Chet, we're going to look at Chet Samek and see if there is a word. So what we got to do is move over here to, let's see, this is going to be Samek Lamed. So we went too far. Or no, that's Dalet Lamed. Never mind, we didn't go too far. We're close. So now we have Vav Vav, Zayin Zayin, and we should be coming up on Chet here. There we go. Chet, Dalet, Chet, Hey, Chet, Chet, and Chet Tet, Chet Lamed, Chet Mem, Chet Nun, Chet Samek. Wall for holding support. Okay, so the fabric of the tent walls are supported by the ropes and poles, just as one person who is weak is supported or leans on or trusts another who is strong. One is supported by his family line. So when the chet, see that, and let me explain here what's going on. The chet is in the place of honor. Here, the samek, or the thorn, is actually in the place of the father, or in the place of in the place of sovereignty or whatever. But the chet augments or changes the condition of the thorn. So interestingly enough, if the chet is in the position of honor, it means wall for support. Oh gosh, I am so curious to the extent that I almost want to jump into the other lexicon and see what words we come up with in the stems. In fact, let's do that. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to jump into the other lexicon here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to use the Hebrew alphabet to type in the letters chet, samek, and make it search for that. Okay, and so there is our parent root that was discussed in the other lexicon. Refuge. Action is to support. No pictographic explanation, but a place of support and trust. Okay, so let's get this straight. Chet samek means to support. Samek chet means to sweep. Huh. Okay. So let's go ahead and type in the opposite here and do that. There we go. Samek chet, parent root, action to sweep. No concrete, no abstract, no pictograph, no definition, no child root definition. And its first definition is to meditate, as in a sweeping away of thoughts. And remember, we've searched for the word sweep. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying we've searched for the word sweep and we have not found it. It definitely exists right there. See, those two are strong concordance numbers. So it definitely exists, but we just haven't found it yet. And we have no idea how many times those strong concordance numbers are used, okay? Our word is this word here, 7742, okay? Rubbish. See, and here and so here's the issue, obviously. And then this one, swim. Oh, you know what? We didn't check swim. We should probably check swim. But let's talk about this for a minute. Our Hebrew word for unclean is tomei. Okay. If you are tomei, you are unclean. Tomei is the infinitive, or maybe it's, yeah, the infinitive of of tama. Okay. Our Hebrew word for perfection is tamam. Okay. Now, tamam is not spelled with the same lettering. But the point that I want to bring forward is that tome and tamam are very close in sounding, or what we would call a cognate. Now, Rabbi Hirsch said that when you had that going on, you needed to pay attention to the sounding as much as you needed to pay attention to the meanings. And so, two things. Number one is that when we are working with the word tomei, we know that it is actually a tet and a mem. Okay? Tet, mem. A tet is the drawing of a basket, and mem is the drawing of water. So in the ancient Hebrew nomadic lifestyle, the washing of feet when you came into a tent was very important. How then, and this is actually I will credit Deborah with this. Can a thorn be brought into a tent? If your feet are unclean from the road, you remove your sandals, you wash your feet, you enter the tent. How then is a thorn brought in, except that it is caught, it has taken hold or grasped on something other than your feet and has come in, right? But then she said, a thorn inside the tent. And I said, well, wait a minute now, because Resh Chet, okay, is the word for Ruach, and it is the Resh on the right hand side and the Chet on the left hand side is a drawing of a man and the drawing of a tent wall, and it means man outside. Okay. And there's a couple other words that have to do with outside. For example, chet mem. Mem is in the right hand, chet is in the left hand. And when mem is in the right hand position, it is the word for heat. And specifically, chet mem is water outside or water separate. And the idea of separating water had to do with separating the curds from the whey in the making of cheese, which was a very, very important delicacy in the Middle East. And so when you had special guests, you had chet mim available, right? And to this day, I believe chamam is the word for cheese, all right? Leavening, which caused a heat process to occur, is chametz, right? Chet mim. Okay, I'm sorry, not mim chet. Chet mim, where chet is on the right side and mim is on the left side. So that's still talking about outside. So she has a legit argument that this thorn is on the inside of the tent. I think I'm going to a little bit run with that, because what was fruit, right? Fruit was the exposure of the inside. We learned that today as we studied it. Fruit is the exposure of the inside, as in the opening of man or the opening of the mind. What bore fruit? Trees, right, of the field, right? Trees of the field, plants of the field bore seed, bore fruit, right, on the third day. Okay, and we know that the serpent was more enlightened. Remember, we studied that out. He was more enlightened, or he was more naked than the other beasts of the field. Of course, we know that in Hebrew, comparison is about from, just like it is in the Hispanic or the Latin languages, where you say something is something from something is a comparison, right? So when it says the serpent was more crafty than the rest of the beasts of the field, it doesn't say that. It says the serpent was more crafty from the beasts of the field, which doesn't necessarily mean comparison. We just choose to interpret it that way in the barbaric, bastardized language of English, right? We have a problem here when it comes to the understanding of the ancient Hebrew language when we try to make it English. So in continuing to search for the understanding of this word, we've identified that when the chet is in the position of honor, it is strong wall or wall of strength. So let's see if we can identify what then would it be if it was flipped. If the thorn is altering the state of the wall, it means sweep, which we really haven't proven because I'm going to put it to you like this. The word sweep and the word swim exist, okay? The word sweep and the word swim exist in the Hebrew to describe, okay, let me get this straight in a way that it sounds better. The word sweep and the word swim are translated sweep and swim in the King James Version of the Bible, and therefore there are Strong's numbers assigned to those two words. The word sweep and swim are English words. The action of sweeping does not necessarily equate to the use of a broom. The action of sweeping doesn't equate to the to sliding across something and removing something. We don't know what actually exists there, but let's say that we just ride with the idea of sweep and swim. Mom says you go swimming, you go mikvah, you jump in the water to clean yourself, right? And then sweeping and swimming could then equal cleaning. But then does meditate equal cleaning? And then can we even put meditate in there? What if he went out to sweep? Which means what if he went out to clean the world, right? Or what if he was swimming, right? Okay, what's the relevance here? He was in the field. Why is that relevant? Because of what we're about to learn about Esau versus Jacob. And that is going to be the end all, because Jacob I have loved and Esau I have hated. So we know that whatever Esau's choices were is what made Yahweh hate Esau. That is going to be for next week, of course. But what we need to know is what Isaac was doing in the field. Well, we know that Yahweh never made a covenant with Esau. Yahweh makes a covenant with Isaac after the encounter with the Philistines, right? I believe it's after. Anyways, point being, and this is important, is Isaac appears to not be out of line, okay? Especially in the fact that he brings Rebekah into or under the covering of his mother's tent. It's almost as if Isaac tells Abraham, I'm going to go finish your work. I'll use my mother's tent for that. In other words, I will use my mother's wisdom for Rebekah, but I'm going to go finish the work you began, and I'm going to help change this world. I'm going to bring change to this world, right? I'm going to affect change. So then Isaac goes out and does this thing. Samekhet means sound, or means trustworthiness. I'm sorry, chet samek. So the tent wall and the thorn, when the tent wall is in the right hand side, means what? Strong wall or trust. What do you guys say about the possibility that Isaac was either A, building trust, or he was somehow using the opposite of trust in his mechanism with the field? Share your thoughts. What do you guys say? Any thoughts? Okay, so this is my thinking on this. we know that the chet can mean separate, right? We know that the thorn is indicative of a problem on a prescribed path. We know that the resh chet or ruach is a prescribed path that we are supposed to view as a guideline or a direction in order to move, right? What we would call the quote unquote leading of the spirit. But the resh chet actually means man outside, and it means to follow a prescribed path or routine. And the man outside follows a prescribed path or routine so that he does not get enticed by the field. He does not get enticed, as in what happened to the prodigal son. He does not get pulled into the gambling and the fake friends and the women and all of the squandering, right? He doesn't get into squandering. And if you go back to biblical economics, this makes sense. A man outside follows a routine in order to not deviate from the path. What would cause him to deviate from the path? The thorn. Now, the thorn serves two purposes. The thorn bush serves as a tent, or a protective wall, right? That's where we get the word sukkah from, a wall of protection, right? A a prescribed path causes a wall of protection. But what else does a thorn do? So either way, a thorn assuades, right? A thorn causes, is assuade a word? A thorn causes a change in direction. So here comes the wolf going to get the sheep, and he comes to the thorn bushes, and he has no choice but to what? To change course. A thorn is designed to cause you to change course. So perhaps this thing that Isaac is doing in the field is not about meditation at all, but has something to do with him following a prescribed path. So the premise is you go outside the tent to tame the animals, cultivate the fields, and care for the animals. And when we get into the deep esoteric, what we are doing is we are taming the ego, right? But we do give the ego its portion in order to understand what not to do. In other words, we listen to the voice of the ego so that we understand what not to do. And we listen to the intuition of the intensification of all power in the universe as us in order to understand what to do. Not because it's some divine will that is written in concrete and you can't change. That would make David an idiot when he gets on his face and fasts, and that would make Samuel a liar when he decides to change the mind of God, and Moses a liar when he decides to change the mind of God. But instead we find that the quote unquote will of God can be persuaded by men. Now, I do believe that path and direction, and that is similar to a river in that the will of God follows the path of least resistance, and any resistance to the will of God changes the direction or alters that path or makes an adjustment. So humanity chooses really bad behavior, and all of a sudden we have a flood. Was the flood planned from the beginning? Well, if it was, then God's kind of a sick puppy, right? Why are you going to spend almost 2,000 years cultivating the relationship between yourself and a people who are less than you just to end up destroying them and only come up with one single individual? You see where that just kind of turns into a malevolent being, doesn't it? Which takes us back to Epicurean philosophy, in which Satanists have a better look upon God than we do. So let's maybe not do that. Let's stick with this idea of adjustment. And if we stick with this idea of adjustment, then this starts to make sense. So Isaac is trying to alter the course of humanity, right? Am I biased in this? Yeah, a little bit, because my mission is to alter the course of humanity. My mission is to teach you all that we don't serve a wrathful God and that it is a very inappropriate interpretation of Torah. And furthermore, all of the calamity and all of the things that have happened to the people of Israel and all the other things that have happened in the world do not reflect upon a malevolent being, but instead upon the choices of its creation to be sovereign, which does not go with the plan. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if it's all indeterminate, and what I mean by that is if it's all determinate, and what I mean by that is that there is absolutely no sovereignty of mankind within the equation. And he just does what he wants, whenever, however he wants. I refuse to serve that God. And I would advise you to do the same. Because there is some very evil, dark stuff in this world that he supposedly created because he wanted it. I want you to think about the sickness of that philosophy. We serve a benevolent being. It is our egos that are the problem. And we could get into all kind of Kabbalistic principles about why evil exists. And I know there's some of you out there is like, wait a minute, God says I create evil and I create good. Okay, fine. But again, the why behind the why is the big question, because the moment we get into a sovereign God creating calamity as a will, we part ways. We part ways. I have no interest in even really being in fellowship with a person like that. I cannot accept a philosophy like that. That's not the God I know. In my own life, I have experienced a benevolent God, not a destructive, wrathful God. My own choices have brought upon themselves their own consequences, as have yours. But that does not equate to the will of God. Now, does everything happen exactly the way it's supposed to? Sure. We can accept that there is a general mechanism of movement of will of God. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's based upon your choices, and it is a conditional election. He's going to choose people whose hearts are pure to do pure things. He's going to choose people whose hearts are wicked to do wicked things. It says he chose Pharaoh in order to make his name known. Do you know what Calvinists teach? That he created Pharaoh to die and go to hell. That's what Calvinists teach because of Romans chapter 9, which they do not understand. What's my point? My point is that you cannot logically justify serving a malevolent being. So therefore, change your thinking. Be like Isaac. Isaac decided to take his father's teachings and his instruction to the extremity of their authority, power, and he wanted to alter the course of humanity. He wanted to change humans. He wanted to move them towards Torah, towards righteousness. And I don't mean right living, towards wealth and equal distribution of that wealth, through justice, through what? Justness and equal distribution of justness. What's justness? An equaling of the scales. That's where equality comes in. That's where conservatives have failed in their philosophy and where liberals have prevailed. And that's where religious fanatics who think that it is patriotic to be loyal to a country who does not practice Torah and who does not acknowledge Yeshua as the guiding principle is somehow Christian. Be forewarned, the dragon goes after those who have the testimony of Yeshua and the commandments of God. Be forewarned that the philosophy that Peter had is different than your philosophy. The philosophy that Paul had is different from your philosophy. He did not believe the law was done away with, or he would not have gone into that temple and taken that vow and announced that there would be sacrifices on a certain day. That is lying. He did not say, my fellow brethren, I am also a Pharisee and have the hope of the resurrection. He did not say in Philippians, I am a Pharisee, and that was something he was lying to you about. Wake up. Rabbi Shaul stayed a rabbi his entire life, stayed a Shomer Torah his entire life. Let's get into the rabbi's nugget. Okay, so I have a Midrash section where I post information and other people post questions about the Torah portion. And in this Torah portion, I said, Rabbi's nugget. How many years are mentioned in chapter 23, verse 1? So I want to see if someone can tell me how many years are mentioned in Genesis chapter 23, verse 1. Somebody unmute and tell me how many years are mentioned. Okay, so let's see. Let's go read how many years are mentioned. I will go ahead and share it on this screen in case we need to use the Hebrew lexicon. Genesis chapter 23. In the NLT, it says, when Sarah was 127 years old, verse 2, she died. In the Young's literal, and the life of Sarah is 127 or 120 and 7 years of the life of Sarah. Okay, let's see if that is true in, say, the NASB. Now, Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of Sarah. Do you guys see this right here? That is called a gloss. And glosses are very dangerous. Glosses are designed to try to explain the language problems, okay? And where we really run into that is in the Greek. But in this case, we'll just stick with the Hebrew, and let's try the King James Version. And Sarah was 107 and 20 years old. These were the years of the life of Sarah. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a look at the Hebrew. Okay. So a couple things that we need to probably discuss. Let me go ahead and come out of here real quick. All right. So a little brief grammar information should probably be brought forward. So let's start with this. In ancient Hebrew philosophy, the sea is vast and grand and many. Okay. So it's not just a plurality in the sense of quantity, but it can be necessarily in the sense of quality. Okay. So the caution that needs to be taken is in English, when we pluralize something, we are talking about quantity. Let me explain. If I say there is one man, there is a single individual. If I say there are two men, then you count that as two men. But in Hebrew, if I say two men, I may not mean men. I may mean that that man has two quality. In other words, he's more in quality than just one single man. So now we get into what? We get into the concept of plurality being about quality and not about quantity. Now, the reason this is important is because the word see, yam, yod, mem, or a work in chaos is actually the letters that are used to pluralize masculine nouns. The word vav tet or ot is the plurality of the words that are feminine. So, for example, nafeshot is souls. Why? Because nafesh is a feminine noun. Torot is a feminine noun, Torah. So Torot, or my teachings, right, is a feminine. So only masculine words get this pluralized C at the end of it. Now, there's two different pronunciations. One is ayim and one is im. Why? Because in the Hebrew, not the English, there is what's called a dual plural, which means more than one, but not more than two. So two together. Okay. Now, it has to do a lot with the understanding of what to represent, right? But it's important for you to know that the concept is simple. When you have two people in a vote, you have a either unanimous vote or you have a split vote. And the context or the idea is that means that there will always be a draw or there will always be a unanimous decision, which means a draw will go to no one. Which means what? The dual ending in Hebrew has to do with equality. Okay. So ayim, as in Mitzrayim, or the two bindings, which is the word for Egypt, versus Mitzrim, which would be Egyptians, which is more than two. Okay. So what you need to know is that the Yod Mem, regardless of its pronunciation, is the plural for masculine noun endings. So if we were to see in the English the word years, and we were to see in the English a plural of the word years, then I think you would agree with me that if we were to see anything other than that, we would have an issue, wouldn't we? Because when we go into the English, let me jump back in here. When we go into the English, we have years, years, years. And even if we go into the Young's Literal, which is the most accurate translation you can get a hold of, years, years. Okay, here we go. Let me read it to you. So this is va yi chayu. Va-yi chayu. Okay, which is what? And was. I'm sorry, va-yi-hayu. Va-yi-hayu. And it was, right? See there, to become. So this is our copula. So it became, and it became, and notice this is third person masculine, so it could be and he became, but let's just go ahead and go with this. So, and it became Chayei. Chayei. Okay. Now, Chay by itself is what? To be alive or living. Chaya, to live, right? Chaya. But Chay by itself is life. It's the noun of the word. All right. But with that yod there, it is a plural. Okay. I'm not going to get into that too much. And it's in construct form, means of. A construct in Hebrew means of. So this is the, and it became, so this is what? This is plural. So, and they became the lives of Sarah. 100 year. Singular. Okay. And then Esarim. What's Esarim? It's from the root Eser, which is what? 10. Esarim is what? 20. Esarim is 20. Esarim Shana, another year. Not years, right? So now we have 2 years, right? A year mentioned in the singular, a year mentioned in the singular. Then we have right here, and or ve sheva. What's sheva? 7. 7. Now look, shanim, years. Now watch this. Shanei is years of. And then Chayei, which is what? Lives of Sarah. So now we see why we have such a problem with the translation. Why it seems so weird. that it says the life of Sarah is 827 years, the years of the life of Sarah. What in the world is going on? Well, first of all, you need to understand that there are one, two singular years. Okay. And then there are plural years. So before we do anything else, let's take an opportunity to Midrash the question. Why? Why is year singular here? Any thoughts? Okay. I'm not going to check YouTube. So if one of you on YouTube who's also on the Zoom call, if one of you see a question come up, let me know. First and foremost, what happened in the 100th year of Sarah? What happened in the 100th year of Sarah? She would have been in a state of weaning Isaac, would have been his second year alive, right? Because she was 99 when she gave birth to him. That's what Abraham goes. Will Abraham in his 100th year have joy, and will Sarah in her 99th year bear children, right? And then we know that she gave birth to Isaac around or in at age 99 because of what Abraham said.
I thought Sarah was 90.
90?
Yeah.
Was she? Let's go see. So that would be in Genesis 17 is what I'm talking about, where Abraham says, no, 17, there we go. And Abraham falleth on his face and laugh and say in his heart, to the son of 100 years is one born, or does Sarah, daughter of 99 years, bear? Okay. So that's where I'm coming from with that one. Oh, sorry, I didn't share that screen with you. I'll go ahead and share that screen with you real quick. So Abraham is asking, will Sarah at 99 years old bear children? Right? So that's what I'm going off of.
It says 90.
It says 90.
Oh, it says 90? Oh, it does say 90. Oh, yes. Okay. My bad. Okay. So yeah, okay, 90. Gotcha. So, all right. So then what happens when she is 100 then? Let's ask that question. If she's 100 years, when she's 100 years old. Because we could still ask that question even though they messed up that one part. What happens at 100 years old for Sarah?
Well, apparently that's when she weans Isaac.
Okay.
Isn't that what you said?
Well, I was thinking that that was saying 99, not 90. So, and that I probably got that confused from when Abraham was 99 or whatever. Um, but anyways, so what what is the significance of Sarah being 100 years old? Because year 100 is really what it says there. These are the lives of Sarah: year 100, year 20, and 7 years, right? Any thoughts? Yeah, I was thinking that she was 99 when she conceived, and she was 100 when and she was 99 when she bare him, and she was 100 when she would have been weaning him. So that doesn't necessarily jive. But the premise is still the same. What happened in her 100th year, do you think? Go ahead.
Well, Isaac would have been about 10 at 100, so he's uh it, it- 10 would have been a significance of walking that walk into manhood for, if the for a young man, he would be in that age of starting to come into his starting to come into age.
Okay. So perhaps maybe that's significant to say that he was at least weaned by then. We could go with that, right? It's not Isaac's 12th year, right? And it is definitely not anything significant to Abraham that she's 100 years old. Like Abraham's 110th year isn't mentioned. So we have this 100. Well, what's interesting about the word 100 is it is actually in the Hebrew a very interesting word. So let's go take a look at that. I think that's going to help a little bit. So let's go back over to this verse and look at the word 100, which is me'ah. Me'ah. It means 100 as a simple number, right? It is a primitive numeral used 581 times, and every time it is calculated as 100. Okay. Now, there are variations of it, like what we've got here, right? Where we've got hundreds of hundreds and things like that. But in the end, it simply is 100. But it is a child root. Why? Because it has a hey. So now let's go ahead and let's do our thing. Let's go look it up in the ancient Hebrew lexicon of the Bible. Oh, I'm still in the Hebrew version here. It's okay. It'll still find that number. 3967. Did I copy that wrong or something? 3967. Why is it coming up with the Gimel? Let's try again. Interesting that it is not coming up. Oh, it is. Okay. There we go. Okay. So Mem Aleph, originally an unknowable amount, but also to mean 100. A specific number, but also a large amount without any reference to a specific number. So interestingly enough, 100 does not necessarily mean 100. And look at this. Here we go again. Guys, you want some more mystery? We've got no action, no abstract, no pictographic definition, and no definite, no nomadic definition. So this mem aleph is originally an unknowable amount, but this is an ancient reference to 100. And notice it doesn't have the hey with it at all. Okay. And what's interesting is when we start to get into it, we will find that it actually is a very, very short discussion. That's it. That's it. Okay. Why? What is actually going on here? This is again a cognate of mim hey. Ma means what? Okay. It is an interrogative to ask the specifics of a thing. What is it? Right? What is this thing? Mim aleph is the sound ma, right? But spelled with an aleph instead of a hey. So when we talk about cognates, again, we're talking about the sounding of a word, sounding like another word, and therefore having similar meaning. This is another work of Rabbi Hirsch. So in context, the way that I want you to think about this is it's asking the question, what? Okay? Not what as in asking the definition or the limitations of a thing, right? That's what our human minds need. We need that finite height, width, depth, time, space and time, context, where and when, right? But instead are a mechanism of the how grand or how innumerable something is, right? So the word 100 is a very difficult word to translate in English. Now, there are other words for 100 in Hebrew, okay? But this word, me'ah, is actually the Hebrew word in the Hebrew language now in modern Hebrew for 100. When you say 100 shekels, you say me'ah shekalim, right? Or maybe it's sheklim, sheklei me'ah. Yeah. Anyways, point being is that is the word 100 in this verse. So now we can say unknown year, right? Not years. We can't say 100 years. This is the translator saying, oh, well, they gave a number here. So we're just going to go ahead and translate that word shana as plural, even though it's not plural. And they don't make any note of it to let you know that. You go straight into, like, for example, a John MacArthur Bible. There's no notes in there saying anything about that, even though that he's very exhaustive in a lot of his commentary about the Hebrew. That's not mentioned in his Bible. Okay. So that's number one. But then we have a 20 and the word year. And what's interesting is the word 10 in and of itself is an interesting word. Let's go take a look at that real quick. Because I'm hoping to enlighten you guys as to the dangers of how numbers work in the Hebrew language, right? Dangers for what? Translation, that's all. I mean, we're not talking about like, fiery pit kind of dangers. That's a Christian thing. Okay, here we go. Going down into this aser, right? Coming from the root word asar, a tithe, to take a 10th part, okay? Or to decimalize a group of things. In other words, to break them into tens, right? So asar literally means to take a 10th part. Let's go see if we get any insight in the ancient Hebrew lexicon of the Bible to kind of back our play here, okay? So here we are. Oh, look, it's the thorn again. It's not spelled correctly with the sheen. That's a Babylonian thing. That's what happened when they were in Babylon. But going back to it being just the samek, what do we have? We have a sar as an adopted root, right? To give a 10th, to tithe the 10th part of something given voluntarily for the support of a religious establishment. That's pretty cut and dried. But that's where we get the number 10, is off of the idea of giving a 10th to a priest. One portion of a whole divided into 10 equal portions, and then one is given away. The number 10 does not mean the number 10. It means to give a 10th. So interestingly enough, what we've got here in that sense then is we've got a double portion of a tithe. Any thoughts? Care to share? So one of the things right off the bat that, and I can tell you, I've sat in Midrash circles, I've sat at Midrash tables and discussed this at length. And I can tell you there's a reference to it in Zohar, there's a reference to it in Talmud, there's a reference to it in Ibn Ezra, there's a reference to it in my Maimonides, there's a reference to it in Rashi, there's a reference to it in the Midrash Rabbah. There is lots of discussion about this anomaly in Torah where the word year is not plural and is next to a number that represents something plural. Now, the word 20 is definitely plural, but the word year is not plural. Oh, and then we have another anomaly, as if it was not enough to go 100 year or 100th year, we could argue, 20th year or double portion tithe year. 7 is pluralized. Shevarim, shanim. 7 is pluralized. So interestingly enough, let me show you what I'm talking about here, because then we start to get into some really crazy stuff, right? Come on. Told you guys, this is why I wanted to do this Torah portion, because it is just off the wall. So many different things in it that are just something else. Okay, here we go. life of Sarah, right? It is going to be I'm sorry, Sheva is not pluralized, the years are, right? 7, which is not plural, and years is plural all of a sudden. Look at this, 100, and then singular year. Move this out of the way. Singular year in the absolute state. 20, pluralized, singular year. 7, singular, plural years. Thoughts? Oh, and then we have plural years again in the construct state, where you just drop the mem in order to say of. And I will throw out there that life is pluralized. Life is pluralized. Sarah is singular. Sarah is singular. Of course, it's singular, it's a name, but you get my point. And what's even crazier is that this right here, and this right here, and this right here, and this right here are the same. The only thing that is separate or different is this set right here. Whoops. Right here. Okay. And this thing right here, which consequently, just so you know, has the same gematria as Abraham's life, 175. Okay, so at any rate, we have Chayei Sarah at the end and at the beginning, and sandwiched in between the two, which we know Torah does this. It repeats things like this and repeats things at the end like this in order to sandwich the things in between. So what we need is to understand all this. However, our problem is instead of having a pattern of singular year, we have a plural year pop up, right? In fact, interestingly enough, we have a plural and then a plural construct pop up, which is another mess. So I guess this isn't necessarily as much a rabbi's nugget as it is a thing to make you go, right? But I'm curious, does anybody have any thoughts or insight into why we would have the word year, not years, and why we would use numbers to describe her years, right? Anybody have any thoughts here? Let me show you guys something. Let's go look at the death of Abraham. These are the days of the years of the life of Abraham, which he lived, 175 years. Let's take a look. Boom. Singular, plural. Again, it's not some, look, here's years of the lives of Abraham, right? And then he lived 100 year. He lived 3 score and 15. Okay. it's 70, right? 70 years. And then what? But it doesn't say 70 years. It just says 70 year, the 70th year, right? And then what? 5 years. Okay. Perhaps we should look at another age somewhere in the history of mankind and see if we encounter that same pattern. Either way, there's an indication that there's an unknown amount of years, and then there's significant years that or either that or the years that happen a certain way. I would even propose the possibility that this is a way to describe the years of mankind. Like we could go check in Genesis chapter 6. In fact, let's do that. Just because, again, as a rabbi's nugget, we got to have some sort of insight here. It is very anomalous. And I can tell you, it's not a new thing for me, but I can tell you I was reminded of it today as I was looking through this stuff. We'll just turn the pages back to 6 here. 6. Here we go. My spirit shall not endure with mankind, for his days are. Well, would you look at that? Year. But now, interestingly enough, there is no year in between. Oh, wow. That's another anomaly. Why isn't the word year right here in between these two words? Here's 20, just like with Sarah, and the singular year, but then 100 is by itself. Ooh, boy, there's a mystery. Let's try Noah's, or not Noah's age, but one of the patriarchs' age. Let's say we go with Methuselah. How about Methuselah? And he lived, Methuselah, 780 year and 100 year. Wow, there is a lot to be understood about the description of years with the human lives, isn't there? This is interesting. What do you guys think about this? What's the relevance here, do you think? Any thoughts? Why is the word singular? And why sometimes is the word year connected with a number, and sometimes it's a number, and then the word year? Well, I guess we'll learn, won't we? We will learn and understand more, but I'm willing to bet that we may not be talking about years here. We may not be talking about years. We may be talking about something else. But who knows? Who knows? We still acknowledge that no other woman has had the years of her life brought up before. So we do still acknowledge that. So interesting, very interesting. In fact, it seems as though maybe we have happened upon something where Torah uses the word year to describe each number, and then the final one gives the last of their years. It would be interesting to discover how many different variations we have of it. But now your eyes are open to it. So that's, I guess, my rabbi's nugget. Usually I give you some insight, but really all I did was just show you something interesting in Torah. I don't really have an explanation for it per se. I don't remember any discussions about it in my Hebrew learnings and specifically in the basics of biblical Hebrew, which was the first Hebrew class I took, and then I used Hayesod and then something else to augment my Hebrew learnings. But I don't remember any mention of this ever. I don't know. Any thoughts? Well, Shabbat has ended. We've gone another whole entire Shabbat midrashing. So exciting and fun to do, an ancient practice, all the way going back to Yeshua, who you guys don't know, but who was midrashing when he said, "Today is this scripture fulfilled in your ears." All right. Well, I think that we have sufficient enough gone through Chayei Sarah. So I will say, I won't say Shabbat Shalom, but I will say Shavua Tov. I'm thinking maybe there's 3 stars in the sky, but we'll go ahead and end now. Shalom, shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.